Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. All right, today's podcast is on the Agnipath Scheme. And to discuss the scheme, I have with me Navdeep Singh. Navdeep Singh is a practicing lawyer at the Punjab and Haryana High Court and the author of two books: Military Pensions, Commentary, Case Law and Provisions, and March to Justice, Global Military Law Landmarks. He was also a member of the Raksha Mantri's Committee of Experts to review litigation, service, and pensionary matters, constituted by the Defense Ministry in 2015 on the directions of the Prime Minister. And on the one of the most important thing is Navdeep is a great human being. Navdeep, welcome.
Thank you, Kushal. How are you?
एकदम बढ़िया है यार.
Great.
It's been a while since we've spoken. You came on the podcast, I think, more than 2.5 years ago,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
we
that's
spoke
right.
about the disability pension issue.
Yes, yes,
N-
yes. I,
Today we are here back discussing the Agnipath scheme. So Navdeep, for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners who are going to listen to the audio only version, can we start with this? Can you basically try and explain what this scheme is all about, the bare bones of the scheme, so that people who don't know, maybe they get a better idea?
yes. In our discussion, also, we'll try not to be too technical, and we'll just go into the very basics of the issues that we're going to discuss. I mean, in a freewheeling interview format. Uh, so basically, Agnipath scheme is that you serve the military for just for 4 years instead of being a career, you know, Jawan in the forces, and you serve for 4 years, and after that, just 25% will be granted permanence within the military, and 75% would be eased out. They'll be released from service, and the government would attempt to skill them, and the government will attempt to make them fit for another job, um, whether within the government or in the private sector, and certain reservations or quasi reservations have also been announced by the government in various services like the Central Armed Police Forces. So that is the mota concept.
All right. So now, so you wrote a detailed piece in Quint on 19 June 2022, where you lay down all the possible problems that you see, or we could you could I think you used the correct word over there, the genuine apprehensions that we could have about the scheme itself. But before that, we will look into that. What do you make of the overall intent of the government with this scheme? Do you think the government's intent is in the right place and we should go? Because I remember I read an article. The history of this whole thing is, after the Kargil war, I think the armed forces and the government of India at that time, in its wisdom, decided that we need to do something about the age of the armed forces itself. I think, if I remember my numbers correctly, the armed forces in India, their age is like 35 on average, and we should bring it down to 26 or something. So they had started working on it at that time. So what do you make of the overall intent, as in to try this scheme out?
Is the intent to bring down the age, the overall age of the fighting personnel in the military services, or is it to save pensions as it's going on the Twitter? I mean, supporters of the scheme have been demonizing military pensions and OROP, etc., etc., saying that the nation cannot afford such a huge pension bill, and that is the reason why the scheme has been implemented. Whereas the Raksha Mantri, a very good man, he said that no, the day of the press conference when the scheme was announced, he said no, nothing doing. I mean, money is not an issue. Then you have voices which are not so informed, talking of lowering the military age. Uh, Firstly, I'll try my best. I mean, I said this before also. I'll try my best to be as objective as possible. I'm not here to please anyone. I'm not here to displease anyone. And I mean, we've been discussing this, not just this issue, other issues also. That uh, who is your best friend? Who's the friend of a nation? The one who shows you a mirror, or the one who just goes wah 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 and yes sir, yes ma'am. So we need to, cut the noise and focus on the very basics of this issue. The Cargill Review Committee, many other committees in the past, and many generals on TV in the recent past who have been calling the scheme a win-win, paradigm shift, game changer, etc., etc. While they themselves get, I've said this before, much to the chagrin of people, that you are yourself getting 1,50,000 per month as pension, and your, you know, every issue of your life is catered for, and you're getting your lifelong medical facilities for self and family, and then you call the abolition of pensions in one go as a win-win game changer. I mean, look inside and at least try to look at the scheme in a holistic manner so as to make it non-exploitative, so as to make it a success, so as to not make it seem as if we are treating the youth of the nation as cannon fodder. And if we really want to go ahead with a scheme like this, how to tweak it to actually make it a win-win. Uh, so now, talking of the Kargil Review Committee and the generals, talking of the old system of, they've been talking of this, that earlier, even during the 60s, 70s, 50s, people used to be on a system called color reserve, wherein you served in the colors, that is physical service, for 7 years, and then you spent 8 years in the reserve. It had various formats such as 7/8, 8/7, 5+10, 10+5, 9+6, 6+9. Uh, the basic format was 7 and 8. So 7 years or 8 years you serve in the physical color service, and then rest of the time you spend in the reserves, wherein you can be called out in case of a national emergency or a war. Now they've been talking very highly of this scheme, and also even various papers which are now being cited to defend the Agnipath scheme. They've been talking of this color reserve scheme. But let me tell you one thing: the color reserve scheme was one of the most unproductive schemes. Why unproductive? Because in that scheme, essentially you provide a pension to reservists called the reservist pension, which is equivalent to, almost equivalent to, a regular pension on the civil side. Uh, After 7 years in the colors and 8 years in the reserve, or uh, whichever is the time you spend in the colors on the reserves after a combined color reserve service of 15 years. So essentially, a person is just working for 7 years or 8 years, and he or she is getting lifelong pension and all other attendant benefits, the medical cover, other benefits that are provided to any government employee. So before jumping onto these issues, now if you ask those generals who are making these statements, in preference to this, singing pains of the color reserve system, if you ask them that, are you aware that they were paid reservist pension? No, they were not aware. So these, discussions and debates wherein you don't have experts, but you only have politically aligned people who are either totally against something or totally for something, and who are unable to show you the mirror. If that happens, if there is no stakeholder consultation, the political executive, even if it is very, very, very well meaning, would never get the true picture. Now, parroting this, that we've had so many hours of discussions with whom? With yes men and yes women. No, that's not how it works. Have discussions with stakeholders, and the stakeholders in such a system would involve not just the military and not just civil officers. The stakeholders, for example, in such a scheme would even involve medical experts, would involve legal experts, would involve pensionary experts, would involve the market experts, the youth market experts, experts from Ministry of Labor, expert from Department of Pensions and Pensioners Welfare, expert from the Ministry of Home Affairs, actuarial experts, insurance experts, the nubs, the pulse of the nation. These are the kind of experts, uh, mostly from outside the system, also, and representatives of the government, who can only take you to a very level-headed, well-rounded scheme. But if you say that, oh, we only discuss it with people within the military and MOD and the Ministry of Finance, and we come up with a great scheme, I don't think that is possible. Now the good thing is that the Raksha Mantri said that they're open to tweaking the scheme, they're open to making it better, and I do hope it happens, and it will happen. You mark my words, it will happen. And during the course of the discussion, I'll provide you a few points in how this can be better. Um, the social media was absolutely divided on this, as you may have observed. and
It's
totally
always
fallen.
divided.
Yes, it's always divided. So nobody was able to, look into the positives of such a scheme with tweaks, not in the current setup. And the shrill voices on both sides make any debate totally impossible. Any sane debate on social media totally impossible. So it's either you're with us or against us on both sides. So
Hmm.
in that kind of a scenario existing on social media or even in corridors of power, I don't know uh, how do we educate people, or how do we take the scheme forward in a positive or in a well balanced manner. But as I said, I'm sure it will happen. Which way it goes, how it comes about, I don't know, but it would lead to some positive changes, I'm sure.
So I just had a query, like on the burden on the exchequer. I think as a person who believes in fiscal conservatism, I am talking about myself personally. I mean, I don't see an argument. I know the government is not going to do it, and nor am I a spokesperson of the government. Uh, but I think if somebody gives an argument on the overall budgetary requirements and how, in the long run, some things are not sustainable, I'm just saying I don't see that argument to be dismissed outright completely to be the case. I think there
It
is
should
merit
not be
in that.
dismissed. There is absolute merit in that, but let's examine this again in a well-rounded manner.
Sure.
Firstly, what is the soul of the military? The soul of the military is that soldier, that man or woman wearing the uniform. That is the soul of the military. We require morale boosting measures, and we require the man and woman manning that machine, operating that machine, to be well motivated. To have this at the back of his or her mind that if something happens to me, the government will take care of my family. If I get disabled, the government will take care of me and my medical needs. How long does a Who's the largest employer in the government? Is it the military? It's not, it's the railways, to give you an example. Now, if a person joins the railways, how long does he or she serve? Till the age of 60. Till the age of 60. How long does a Jawan serve in the military? He starts retiring after 17 years of service in his 30s. So when you talk of fiscal issues, similarly is the case of the Central Armed Police Forces. You serve till the age of 60, right? So when you talk of fiscal issues, are you only focused on the military, and why? And that too, just a service of 17 years? Why are you not focused on? I don't say don't focus on them. Do focus on them. Pension burden is an issue. It's a very big issue. Excessive, clamor for matters related to OROP. Also, I was against. You may have noted my tweets. I always used to say that one rank, one pension. Don't focus excessively on it. Talk about it. Talk about its anomalies, but don't exaggerate hyper technically the issues that emerge out of it, because OROP is something in addition to the regular pension scheme or the defined pension scheme given by the government. So you may point out arbitrariness or anomalies in the scheme. Perfectly fine. You fight it out legally, perfectly fine. But don't say okay, this should be this much or it should be calculated in such and such manner. Because when you fight something legally, you have to show discrimination vis-a-vis some other group of employees, or vis-a-vis the scheme itself, or some arbitrary clauses. But over here, it is something in addition to the regular pensionary system, and there are anomalies. Perfectly fine, there are anomalies in every, but all of them are not uh, anomalies in a manner which can be uh, taken to shouting matches or outside the regular regime of what is permissible within the legal standards, or within challenge under the writ jurisdiction, or challenge in the Supreme Court uh, under the writ jurisdiction. So that is why I always used to say that don't focus too much on OROP. Don't let people think that people are just after money. That also gives out a very very wrong picture to the world, and makes people feel that oh, ये जो retired फौजी हैं, ये तो बड़े मतलब greedy हैं in the sense, which is not true.
Got it.
So, I totally agree with you. Fiscal issues are to be taken into account, but as I said, that there are other organizations where people are serving till the age of 60 with regular pay, with regular allowances, and with regular facilities to those employees and their families. But why only single out the military where you only serve for 17 years? Now, what is the way out? Uh, in the civil services or in any civil employment, we came with a system called the National Pension System, also called the New Pension Scheme, from 2004 onwards, wherein there is no burden on the exchequer per se. There, the government contributes a particular percentage of amount of your salary. The government contributes in a fund. The employee contributes 10%, uh, or more, up to. I mean, it's voluntary if you want to contribute more, but minimum is 10%, and it goes into a corpus which is managed very well by an autonomous body under the government, and there is no defined pension scheme as you had pre 2004, and it matters, it is linked with market forces also, so that fund takes care of all the pensionary needs. Now that scheme has reduced the pension burden on the civil side, although again the pay burden is more on the civil side because you served till the age of 60 and you get regular pay and allowances, whereas it is not so in the military. So a kind of a system of the NPS on a trial basis for maybe a part of the military, such as a few trades which the military was thinking of outsourcing, or in certain auxiliary organizations, such as we have a system of the Defense Security Corps, for example. They could have been placed on the NPS like the civilians on a trial basis. The NPS could have been tweaked a bit. You could have had a terms of engagement of 10 years. Uh, and extendable if mutually agreed upon. I mean, the conditions could have been worked out. And it would have been closest to the system that you followed on the civil side, would have resulted in a lower burden of pensions. But that was not followed. So what we came up was a hybrid kind of a system, not just a hybrid, a system which does not exist anywhere in India as of now, wherein you serve only for 4 years. Why not 5 years? Because in 5 years you get entitled to gratuity. Now that gratuity is a very small amount. The government would not be bothered about these small amounts because these are one-time payouts. These are not ballooning expenditures in the form of pension. Now, who came up with this bright morning idea that 4 years में discharge कर देंगे, 5 साल नहीं देंगे, gratuity देनी पड़ेगी? Someone within the officialdom, within the military setup or within the bureaucratic setup, because I'm sure if the scheme would have been taken to the political executive saying कि 5 साल रखेंगे, 10 साल रखेंगे, उन्होंने कोई objection नहीं करना था. But again, your eyes and ears have to be open to new ideas, to stakeholders, to actual experts, rather than just what is put up on the file and on PowerPoint presentations. 5 साल नहीं किया उसका एक और नुकसान हो गया, that a person will not get ex-serviceman status because ex-serviceman status and existing reservations are only applicable to those who are pensioners or gratuity holders. So if you don't serve for 5 years, you don't get gratuity, you don't get ex-serviceman status. Had you given them gratuity and ex-serviceman status, they would have been eligible in any case for the reservation of ex-servicemen available in all government services. That would have killed two birds with one stone, to put it crudely. Now, these are the things which need to be debated. You can't just, have a bright morning idea saying that, oh, let's take away. You cannot have exploitative practices. Youth are not cannon fodder. But again, I'm sure when the government realizes this in the first 4 years only, I'm sure there are going to be changes. But you need to be open to these changes. You just cannot go ahead with these PowerPoint presentations. Now, I was privy to a PowerPoint presentation in which they were showing that in the US also there is enlistment for 4 years, and in the UK it is for 12 years. It is totally incorrect. It is cherry picked data. Now, if that data was presented to the political executive, I'm very sorry, because in the US that 4 year system is just one of the several entries, and you have a system of re-enlistment also as a matter of procedure. Over here, there is no re-enlistment except for those 25% who will be taken into the permanent cadre. In the UK, it is not 12 years. It is 12 years plus 12 years. That is one form of entry, and the other form of entry is 24 years. It is called, I think, variable short entry and variable long entry. So it is either
Okay.
12 plus 12 or 24. Look at the veteran homelessness in the US, the suicide rate amongst veterans in the US. It is very high. You find such homeless. I mean, you are outside the country right now. When you visit the US, you'll veteran homelessness amongst veterans is a huge issue. Why is it not an issue in India? We have 0% veteran homelessness, veteran homelessness in India. Whichever government has remained in power, irrespective of politics, you have had 0% homelessness. Why? Because of the massive social security to provided to these people, to the veterans. So, modicum of social security is required. India is a welfare state. It is, penny pinching can go on, but there has to be a balance. You cannot say कि security के aspect के अंदर we have to reduce the amount being paid out. Yes, reduce, have financial prudence, no problem, but you cannot always uh, term it or view it in financial terms. Because of the security of the nation, the economy will flourish, businesses will flourish. If the security of the nation is threatened, or if you don't have motivated men and women manning those posts out there, everything will be fluid, and everything will be threatened. So, fiscal security very much important, fiscal prudence very much important, unpopular decisions to be taken, yes, at times, but after due stakeholder consultation and after trial runs, धीरे 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 you bring in a changeover so that the churning is not that sudden.
Yeah.
There is no sudden churning, and there is no uh, disproportionate hullabaloo about any scheme. And there are very genuine concerns. I mean, we've spoken about disability in the military, the effect on mental health, etc. Now, Kushal, can you imagine in this scheme if a person gets disabled, even in the line of duty, forget about mental illnesses or aggravation of heart diseases or hypertension, in which also disability pension is admissible. Forget about that. Even if you get a bullet on your chest, you're not going to be paid disability pension. You're
What?
only going to, yes, you're only going to be paid a lump sum. So, who takes care of those people who are disabled for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, it's
Who takes care
nonsense,
of
man.
them? And you're not going to give them medical benefits. Who takes care of that? Now compare this on the civil side. In the civil side, even if you're a temporary government servant wearing a uniform, and if you are disabled, any kind of disability, can be any medical condition which is aggravated by service or linked or deemed to be linked with service, you are entitled to a disability pension under the extraordinary pension rules for the rest of your life. Your family and you are entitled to medical facilities for the rest of your life. You are entitled to many other facilities being a government servant and being a government pensioner. So even temporary government servants, I'm saying, and even those under the NPS, if something happens to them, they are paid proper pension, proper disability pension. So why just single out these people and deny them their dues? I'm sure, again, I'm saying, I'm sure this will change. And the political executive, when informed properly about these issues, they'll take a decision, because you cannot discriminate vis-a-vis other government employees. But why not have a well structured discussion and cull these anomalies before even announcing the scheme?
Exactly. That was, in fact, this is the same thing I had tweeted out when this whole tamasha had started. I was like, if you have to make an amendment on the next day of you announcing a scheme, what the hell were you doing before that?
Also, dehors, and irrespective of the merits and demerits of the scheme, uh, even the amount. So that's why I say that experts are always, you will tend to see it on the surface. The people on Twitter will tend to see just the surface. They'll say, oh, इतना सारा पैसा मिल गया उनको, उनको इतना pay देंगे. Now, in the pay, do you realize that they're not going to be paid the dearness allowance, which caters for the inflation for every pensioner and every government employee in India? You're not going to have an inflation-free system for them. So the amount they're getting today, वो थोड़ी सी increase तो होगी, but after 4 years, will it remain inflation-proof? No, because you're not paying them DNS allowance, and which is available to every single government employee. So on the surface, you say, oh, a good handsome amount. Scratch the surface. They are entitled to 30 days leave. Other soldiers are entitled to 3 months of leave. So they're essentially working for 2 months more than the regular soldiers. So when you say that हम बहुत अच्छा पैसा दे रहे हैं, a person who will just see the surface will not be able to realize these things. Now, who will be able to realize these things? The experts and the ones who have the ability to show the mirror and who are not part of an echo chamber just saying yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, wow sir, yes ma'am, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा. So you need such kind of people who can, discuss these things, thrash out these issues, and not just to the public, not just engage with the public, but also engage with the decision makers and make the scheme a success. Tweak the scheme and make it a success. So बाहर बाहर से कुछ और आपको लगेगा. और ट्विटर के ऊपर बड़े बड़े वो threads and blaming or abusing people who try to bring out the khamia in the current dispensation. बड़ी बड़ी बात कि देखो हम 4 साल में ये हो जाएगा वो हो जाएगा. Now the CAPFs has also announced 10% quota for them. Now, what about the existing ex-servicemen quota? That will not be used for them. They are saying additional 10%. Will it fit into the schemes, or will it fit into the scheme of the judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court, which says that 50% is ज़्यादा quota नहीं हो सकता? I don't know. Have we examined that legality? I don't think so, because this was again a knee-jerk reaction the next day, as you said. Next day. Now imagine another scenario. We have again people parroting that, see, look here, we have introduced 10 years quota, 10% quota for them. Now imagine there are two boys or two girls from one house. One joins as an Agniveer for 4 years, gets rejected for permanent employment, and then tries to get into the CAPFs under that 10% quota. So that person loses his or her 4 years of seniority. That seniority will not be counted. So he will get 4 to 5 years junior to the counterparts who join the CAPFs directly. That person's pensionable service will also not be counted. Now, the other person who joins CAPFs directly rather than going through the Agniveer route, he or she will serve till the age of 60, no problem at all. All his or her service will be counted. Medical facilities to self and to family, even after retirement. So, haven't you made the entry into the CAPFs through the Agniveer inferior to a direct entry to the CAPFs? Why wouldn't that person join CAPFs directly rather than follow the Agniveer route? Have we thought through these issues? I don't think so. When will we think about these issues? So these are very genuine apprehensions, as you said, quoting my one of my articles, and these have to be addressed. Find a system how to reduce the stress from pensions, the fiscal stress. Follow the new pension scheme route for a category of employees, or when you are recruiting people, you can have a system, a merit-based system, as you have in the officer entry, that the top merit goes into the IMA. उसके थोड़े से नीचे वाले can opt for the short service commission, or the top guys can also opt for short service commission if they want to, keep their options open. So a similar system could have been followed with Jawans. The top 75% or 50% go into the old kind of a system, and niche wale system go into a 10%, 10 years short-term engagement with NPS. Could have been done. Did we talk about it? Did we talk through it? Did we debate in the public about it? I don't think so. We did not. What started off as a pilot project, just to give, you know, uh, a taste of the military to the youth of the people, became the only kind of entry into the military in 2 years' time. So that's why late Mr. Parekar, we worked with him on the committee of experts under the direction of the Prime Minister. Uh, he always used to think out of the box and consult people outside the government, consult experts, and within government also he used to have a very frank discussion. And what, there's a concept called the Blue Ribbon Commission, wherein you invite experts and You invite people who may not be totally invested in your system or in the government, but they are clear, objective voices. Because sometimes within the system will give you subjectivity, but an outsider can give you a much better perspective on issues. So I think that is a system to be followed, and the current Raksha Mantri, as I said, has also said that has also stated in that press conference, in the first press conference, that they'll be open to changing, and I do hope those changes come in very soon.
Yeah, I think when it comes to fiscal responsibility, there are multiple ways, in my view, that we can be fiscally responsible. I think so there is the national security angle and the national security hawk angle also. I actually fall in that, which actually does demand increase in military spending, but of a different kind. While on the other side, what we need is a much more smarter armed forces. Now, how do we deal with that? I think should have been when I come from a fiscal conservative perspective. I don't say कि इसको social benefits मत दो, उसको social benefits मत दो. My whole point is there has to be a holistic approach to fiscal conservatism when it comes to the armed forces. And
I
also,
totally agree, and reducing the strength of the forces, that is the easiest thing that can be done.
yeah, I was just going to say that. Why don't we reduce the strength of the forces and modernize the force rather than, having this old hathi that is going around? And, and nobody, Navdeep, wants to talk about this. And this is the reality of our society. Nobody wants to talk about it. Look, I have a grandfather who was an army man. Mera nana army mein the. So I know what the mindset of the armed forces is and armed forces families are. I get that. But the point is, let us not beat around the bush. And I don't know how it is. Look, the armed forces is also a job. At the end of the day, why are people clamoring for it in India? Why do people clamor for sarkari jobs? Because of the security and the benefits that are associated
Yes,
with it. Why don't we
absolutely.
as a society also ask this question to ourselves, that why have our policymakers failed so abysmally, so terribly, that there is so much clamoring for government jobs? Is कोई private में है अगर प्राइवेट में दिखे तो लोग नहीं जाएंगे ना, वो लोग प्राइवेट में जाएंगे क्योंकि वहां पे पैसे ज्यादा होंगे, ग्रोथ ज्यादा होगी. यहाँ पे सब जाते उधर क्यों है? क्योंकि उनको दिखता ही वो सबसे सेफ राउट है. सी I have all the respect for the armed forces. I sincerely understand it's a very tough job. But the point is, let us not beat around the bush. This is the most secure job, and the security angle is there, and सबको इसके लिए उधर जाना है.
It's as secure a job as other government services. So that's
Yes,
why I say that it cannot
yes.
be kept at a lower pedestal, and there can be no discriminatory practices. The practices have to be very even. However, as you said, the easiest way was to find ways and means to outsource
Yeah.
certain jobs to reduce the strength, because we are, in fact, whatever we might say, in certain aspects we are overstaffed.
I'll give you an
And
example, Navdeep. Just I'm sorry to come in here.
no
बॉम्बे
problem.
के पासपोर्ट ऑफिस में जाते हैं ना, सो पहले कैसा होता था हाल में, जब वर्ली में पासपोर्ट ऑफिस होता था, तो सब कुछ है ना, एंट्री पॉइंट से लेकर एंड तक गवर्नमेंट करती थी. नाउ द गवर्नमेंट हैज बिकम स्मार्ट. Major section of entering your number, checking your paperwork, entering in and setting your appointments is all done privately. I think one of the big tech giants has that. I don't remember. I
TCS, yeah.
think it was TCS, right?
TCS, yeah.
TCS has the contract for that, and only the passport officer and the Sarkari employee is sitting inside. No, we can do something like that. I was just trying to bolster your point using an example.
Of course, you can, and because there's also law of diminishing returns, in the sense that I'm not an economist, but you know that the if there is a job for which you overstaff, the productivity will go low, right? So if if one or two people can do it effectively, you don't have to employ five or six people in certain aspects, in certain jobs. कई जगह पे you require strength in the military. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. But there are certain places where we are overstaffed, and also superior officers are performing roles which can be performed by much junior officers. So uh, it is not that answers are difficult. Answers are attainable, and these issues are manageable. But again, it has to be an open mind. It cannot be you know it has to be a proper stakeholder consultation. It has to be. Now they say that yes, we've debated this enough, but I kind of disagree, because that debate has to be in a totally different manner. You have to involve various sections of the society. For example, I said that for such a scheme, what kind of people you should have involved. uh, those are the kind of stakeholders that should have been involved, while balancing out a scheme like this. Because after all, you're changing a system जो अभी तक बिल्कुल ठीक काम कर रहा था. ये नहीं है कि काम नहीं ठीक कर रहा था, तो एकदम एक झटके में सब कुछ चेंज करोगे. There bound to be problems. So that's why I say कि ये सब हो सकता है. It's not unattainable. It is very much possible, but with an open mind. You can't go तू मैं all the time, and as you said on Twitter, हर एक चीज blindly yes या no करी जाओ. That's not how. And good, well-meaning people are also doing that to impress. I don't know to impress whom. And
Hmm.
लोग क्यों मक्खनबाजी से impress होते हैं वो भी मुझे समझ नहीं आता. Because I think if if you're genuine and honest in what you're saying, even if it pinches the other person, that person would ultimately realize that he or she is my best friend, rather than someone who's saying कि oh sir तुसी best है, you're the best, and वाह 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 जो तुसी करता बहुत अच्छा करता, जो आपने किया बहुत बढ़िया किया. That
Yep.
person may not be your best friend. He or she is not acting in your interest. He is not showing you the mirror. So uh, let's disconnect ourselves from ideological or political inclinations. If you've tied your flag to a political mast, fine, that's okay. There are many other issues where you can, cry horse and engage in shouting matches, but not in serious issues like these. These issues need to be analyzed very holistically, not to please people, not for makhanbazi. Uh, that's why I was shocked with many retired generals calling it win-win game changer. जब उनको ABC नहीं पता, historically उनको military staffing schemes के बारे में नहीं पता, उनको नहीं पता, उनको पेंशनरी मोडालिटीज के बारे में नहीं पता, उनको ये नहीं पता कि दूसरे गवर्नमेंट सर्विसेज में क्या होता है, दूसरे देशों में क्या होता है. वो सिर्फ पैम्फलेट्स डाउनलोड करके नॉलेज नहीं आती. यू हैव टू बी इन अ पर्टिकुलर profession or in a particular field, invested highly in that field for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. This knowledge does not come out from just a Google search. तो अगर नहीं पता तो आप मक्खनबाजी क्यों कर रहे हो? You just say that we'll examine this, let's examine the pros and cons. So overall, I would say that this would require tweaks, and
So
even if the intention, yeah.
just a fun question here. But don't you think the overall scheme or the idea, I'll give you my perspective as an entrepreneur and as an employer. Now, if I would have known that there is this kind of a system where kids are actually sent into a 4 year army training, because uh, there is an association of discipline, dedication, and a work culture that is associated with the army. I can tell you as an employer who has run a business for 20 years. Now I've quit textiles, but if I was there and I would have found out there is something like this existing in the market where the government is creating such people, let me tell you, I would actually prefer to hire those people in the private sector later on. So don't you think this scheme overall actually is in the good sense in that way? It creates people, a way more employable people in that sense, right?
Let's break this down. Firstly, I would say, again, on the surface, this looks very nice. Firstly, the armed forces cannot be a nursery or a training school for the private sector. Let's get it very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they offer impeccable qualities for certain kind of jobs. Even ex-servicemen do who serve for 17 years. Even they do, and they remain unemployed. They are employed as ATM guards with a soti outside an ATM or outside a bank. Even they are not properly employed. So the focus of the military is the security of the nation with motivated men and women. All other issues are secondary. What you are saying is absolutely right. It can give a impetus to the private sector. But what was the private sector doing till now with people who were retiring after 17 years? What was the support given? So after 17 years of service, जो उसका experience है, अगर वो हम उसको टैप नहीं कर पाए अभी तक, तो 4 years के बाद I don't know करेंगे कि नहीं करेंगे. One good thing is that you'll say that they are younger, they're younger in profile. Well done, perfectly fine. But again, we cannot, for the sake of providing them private employment, we cannot be seen as being exploitative of that youth, because that same youth was till now being given a chance to serve for minimum 17 years with social security in the military. We've taken that away from them, but we haven't taken the same away from from other government jobs, including the CAPFs. So यूथ वहां जाके पूरी सर्विस कर सकता है, पर यहाँ जाके 4 साल के बाद क्रॉस रोड पे तो होगा ही ना. इट इज नॉट 100% assured कि उनको नौकरी मिलेगी नहीं मिलेगी. So an institutionalized system, firstly I would say 4 years is too short. 10 years to hona hi chahiye on new pension scheme if you want to reduce pension. And after that, what you're saying is good, but only after 10 years and with an institutionalized kind of a system. And the private sector would really have to work hard on this and give effect to what they're saying. क्योंकि just by tweeting that कि बहुत अच्छा हो गया, इनको हम यूज करेंगे, भैया पहले आप कितने यूज कर रहे थे लोग, ऐसे यूज इज अ रॉन्ग वर्ड, पहले आप कितने एम्प्लॉय कर रहे थे, आप नहीं कर रहे थे, तो अभी आप इनको करोगे, वेल डन, बट we as society must ensure that this is given effect to. So other thing is that, you know, why, if you want to keep a younger profile and you say that people join for social security, there's another way out. Under the Territorial Army Act, under Section 6A, you can make it mandatory for government employees, any government employee, to serve in the military for a few years. So if you want a younger profile, that can also be done. So before you join and that is well within the means of the government to invoke that section. So people can be, government employees can be sent to serve the military for a few years, 4 years, fine, 5 years, fine, and then get back to their mainstay vocation. So all these things can be done, but again, the schemes cannot be seen as exploitative. That we have to ensure, because as I said in the beginning, the man and woman behind the machine is the soul of the military, and we must take care of them and not just only think about money. Another thing I want to point out, Kushal, it's a very good point that you said that you'll be very happy with such a workforce. Yes, in your kind of a setup, yes, you'll be very happy with that kind of a workforce. But always remember this also, that certain qualities of military service are also overplayed in the society, in our society especially. How would you want a citizen to be in your industry? Yes, you these people will be very good, and even in certain kind of other vocations. How would you want a society to be? Would you be happier with a youth having a crew cut and standing in attention saying Savdhan Vishram and saying yes sir, yes ma'am, or and being totally unquestioning, and or would you be also fine with a person who may have a ponytail or a longer hair and an earring or a tattoo, but questioning the systems, developing qualities of a good citizen, standing in a queue, standing at the red light, stopping at the red light, and also not, taking everything lying down, okay, whatever is being said, okay, हाँ जी सब ठीक है. So qualities vary in the society, in the civil setup, in the industry. So one quality might be very good for a particular vocation, it might not be that great for another vocation. Saying
Yeah,
yes sir, yes
but the
ma'am,
society is so big, Navdeep. I think there is a space for all kinds of people. So
there is
the
space. No, no,
yeah,
absolutely there is space. But just to say or to have this point of view, as you see in social media, that only the military can bring in discipline or make person a good human being is also not correct.
no, no, no. I'm
Uh,
not saying that, but I think if you
no, no, I
have a
agree with you. I'm not
discipline,
answering. I'm not directly answering your query of the industry. I'm just saying.
mm,
I'm just giving another viewpoint that
mhm.
it is not always that a crew cut and yes sir, yes ma'am, or Savdhan Vishram would result in a better human being or a better citizen. There are many other things: good education, good civic sense, being a good citizen, thinking of yourself as a good citizen. So there are many other things also. There are many other qualities also which need to be tapped in the youth, and this is not the end all that. Uh, or it
Absolutely,
is not to say that a person who has received military training would be good in all professions. Uh,
I agree.
Yeah, because sometimes you say that all bureaucrats should must serve in the military for 5 years before joining the IAS or any other civil service. I totally disagree with that, even with my military peers, because the qualities required are totally different. When you're serving in the bureaucracy, you have to have the wherewithal to say no to your seniors, to say no to politicians, to say no to unethical practices, to function in a well knit society, to function in an isolated society, to function with people, to have public dealing. All these qualities are not required in the military. The military has to work in a kind of isolation, not exactly in isolation, but
Chain
you
of
get the
command
drift.
structure. Chain of command
Yes,
structure.
and it is very difficult to say no. It is practically very difficult to say no, and sometimes you have to lump it and you have to say yes, sir. It'll be done, and you don't have public dealing. You don't, you don't deal with a multiple set of people of all kinds, of all types in the society, and you function in a kind of an isolated and not isolated but an insulated manner. You are insulated from these societal issues or even societal vices. So different strokes for different folks. Every job requires a different kind of a skill set. So it is always not right to say that serving in the military would make you a better employee or a government employee in any set of situation. Though while saying that, I'm not disagreeing with what you had stated. I'm just elaborating on certain thoughts on this issue that I
I get
have.
it. I get it. See, but what I was trying to say is like this kind of a service would actually be a good look. The market requires different courses for different places, right? The marketplace is diverse. So in the marketplace, if I was to be like, there are 10 industries that might require this skill set. Now, if something like this in an organized way comes up, actually those 10 industries could actually prosper, and then we could see adjustments being done over there and these kids are being absorbed over there. I'm not saying it will happen. I see a merit in that point, but before I start taking the viewers questions, because we're almost 50 minutes down the line, I would say, let me have this last question to you. Can you suggest what, because from what I've understood, the government has said this scheme is going forward with tweaks. That's what the government has said. We are open to tweaks. Now, if you were to suggest all the tweaks that you want, I mean, obviously, some of them you had recommended in the Quint, but I think the Quint one was more about, ye problem hai. Your essay in Quint was more ye problem hai. I don't want to focus on the problem. I want to ask you this question कि यार नवदीप अब ये स्कीम तो आने वाली है. अब मेरे को बताओ कि इसमें सिचुएशन के हिसाब से हमको क्या चेंजेस लाने पड़ेंगे for this to become a more fruitful scheme.
Yeah, so it is, but this will be intertwined with the apprehensions also. So I'll try to see. If you ask me, although again, it is my opinion, and it should not matter. It should not matter. What should matter is a proper stakeholder consultation, including experts like us, no problem. But just a singular view has no value. And I always believe that well-rounded decisions only come with proper stakeholder consideration by collating views and then deliberating upon them. The first thing I would like changed in this scheme is that it should not be this 4 year thing. It has to be 10 years or 5 years to 10 years with voluntary service from 5 to 10 years with gratuity, which will lead to ex-serviceman status, which will lead to the usage of the existing ex-serviceman quota, which is not being used currently. All those posts are going waste, and you are you are bringing in additional 10% reservation in certain services. Makes no sense. Make them serve till 5 years minimum. Give them a gratuity. Give them ex-serviceman status, which they'll automatically get after gratuity, and they'll be able to apply under the ex-serviceman status quota. One. Second, they have to be brought on a par with the civilian employees on NPS. You should give them NPS, but then the NPS contribution for about 10 years थोड़ी कम रहेगी as because civilians 60 साल की उम्र तक contribute करते हैं, so they get a good corpus. So you have to tweak that scheme. That kicks into effect at the age of 60. This will have to be lowered. So for that you have to discuss with the authority concerned, which is the PFRDA. But these things can be worked out. So without A contributory pension scheme, it's not a good thing. Uh, 5 to 10 years, contributory pension scheme, proper disability pension benefits as are given to regular personnel or as are given to civilian employees, including temporary employees. There can be no question of going back on this. You have to give them disability benefits if a person is getting disabled or incurring a medical condition in service which is related to service. You have to compensate for that loss of quality of life, uh, at par with what you do with the civilians or with the regular personnel, along with medical care, of course, which will come along with the disability pension. Family pension on death. If a person dies in the line of duty, if a person dies in service, every single employee, including temporary employees in the government, get family pension. Their parents will get family pension, or widows. Here, there will be no widows because there will be unmarried young people. So that family pension at par with what is given to others, at par with what is even given to new pension scheme. Uh, People governed by the new pension scheme by the NPS on the civil side. That has to come. There is no question of discriminating. Then you have to make it inflation proof through DA, etc. That you have to see. And then when you employ them on the civil side, after their 4 years, or if it comes to 5 years to 10 years, you have to count that service on the civil side. Otherwise, that service goes waste. It is not counted by the military. It is not counted on the civil side. Then your counterparts, your peers who are joining the civil side directly, they steal a march over you, and you rather lose out. So Agnipath becomes a liability for you, for that particular person who loses out on so many years of service. So that seniority or that pay protection has to be protected to or accounting for service or other service benefits, it has to be protected so that they are at par with their counterparts and their peers. You cannot have the military having an inferior scheme than other government services. So today, even if you join as a peon in the state government, you are better placed and you serve till 60 with NPS and with all service benefits than joining as Agniveer. So you have to kill that discrimination, and you have to make it better than others, not worse than others.
Fair enough. Okay, now I'm going to ask you questions. So I'll start with this. So someone says, I disagree with Major Navdeep on us. I think it was about employment and military training. So why does he think Israel and Korea have compulsory military training? Even those kids know how to say no, right? I guess this was about.
So I'm not sure whether the person who has posed that question is aware that Israel and Korea, they have compulsory military service. Why do countries have compulsory military service? Countries have compulsory military service when there are not enough volunteers and there is not enough population or human resource to join the military. We have absolutely an all volunteer army, and there are millions of people who want to join the military services, and also Central Armed Police Forces, and also other uniformed forces, and for that matter, any government employment. So there is no question of comparing with Israel, where you have compulsory military service because of the reason that there are not enough volunteers to make it a career, and they face a manpower crunch. Ditto with Korea. So you cannot compare a conscription with a voluntary service. Even Agnipath is volunteer based. It is not a compulsory military service.
Not only that, I don't like the idea of compulsory military service as a
No, it
person who
cannot.
believes in freedom.
It will also be unconstitutional.
Yeah, I
Totally. You
don't like
cannot.
it.
Yeah, you
Like
cannot force an
Australia
revocation.
has this weird rule that you have to compulsorily vote. I was like, why? मेरे को नहीं vote करना भाई, तू कौन है? But नहीं, vote करना ही पड़ेगा. Australia has a compulsory rule to vote. I don't know. I don't like these authoritarian streaks where you give so much power to the state. I mean I don't know what's with us in India. They just have this streak in them. But I think what the questioner was trying to tell you is that, on that psychological point that you were trying to make, and people should learn to say no. What he was trying to say is that they still learn to say no even after going through military service. I think
No,
that's what the
what is
person.
no, but what is the option with them? Everybody serves in the military there, so everybody in the society is serving in the military, including in Singapore in these smaller countries. So yes and no is all combined. You can't have a direct comparison with what I was saying with a country where everybody is serving the military.
All right, fair enough. So somebody has asked for clarification. Is this Agnipath scheme more like education plus internship, something of that sort?
So it's the way of joining the military now. It's a regular employment, it's a regular recruitment scheme. I mean, the employment is not regular, but it's a normal recruitment scheme wherein earlier you used to join the military as a career Jawan, but now you'll have to go through these 4 years as Agnipath, and then 25% will be taken in as permanent employees, and 75% will be released. So those other things of the educational benefits or points or credits, etc., they're all in addition to the scheme to help in their post-release vocation. It's not a scheme for employment, etc. And many would not know that even earlier, after serving for 15 years in the army, uh, even if you're not a graduate, it's treated as graduation for certain appointments in the government. So it's not something new that, in this sense, that the army has always been taking care of its employees in that sense. They've been trying to skill them. They've been trying to. We have a organization called the Directorate General of Resettlement. They've also been trying to do this to skill people to make them, to fit them in civil employment. But our efforts mostly have failed because the ex-serviceman reservation still goes vacant, and even the industry is not very enthusiastic in most places. So we have to work as a society to make it a success if we want to make it a success.
So someone has asked, would this reduce the armed forces size or lead to a better or smaller fighting force? This particular scheme, in your opinion?
In the current form, no. Over the years, if if it is if it is linked with the downsizing of the army, ultimately it may. But that would have been done without the scheme also.
All right. So another question was that do you think this scheme or the run to the future is maybe increasing the wage budget spending and basically the military budget in India has always been under discussion, right? We always say, like, so do you think by increasing the wage budget and military spending we could maybe solve the problem overall?
That is the whole debate. It's a very complicated issue. So whether to increase the budget, and from where does that money come? From where does that money come? Because that it's the same money of being deployed for all sectors. So there are no easy answers to this. There are no easy answers at all to this. I mean, I don't think it can be answered in a simplistic manner. And wage reduction or wage rationalization is just one of the issues, but that applies not just to the military, to all other organizations. So as uh, to rationalize the entire government workforce, you have the pay commissions to look into all that. So all these things are very much intertwined. For example, the pay commission looks into the pay and pensions of the military employees as well as the civil employees. Then the finance ministry, it has, there are many kind of financial heads which one has to see, and it is also not this simplistic that you save on pensions and you can buy guns. These are all different heads. Some are recurring, some are capital expenditure. So it's a very complex thing, which financial mandarins uh, always debate on.
Hmm. So I was just thinking, if before we wrap it up, I overall, like I said even before, the scheme is going ahead, albeit with tweaks. We've already seen two or three tweaks being made in the first week of the scheme being announced. And also, I want to put it on record that the kind of nonsensical protests and the burning of property and stuff like that. I mean, that is highly condemnable. And I don't know if that is the future. These are my views, not Navdeep's. If that is the youth that wants to get into the army, I am really scared. I mean, I don't know how else to put it.
Well, you're right. Burning of trains and burning of property is absolutely incorrect.
Yeah.
Debate in a proper manner, protest peacefully. That's okay. That's acceptable in any democratic society. Um, but burning, etc., arson, it's absolutely unacceptable. Not just for the army, for any government service, I would
Yeah.
say. even for the
Yeah.
police. I mean, it's a it's a given that it's totally unacceptable. But also to say that people, you would see, and you had observed the social media, that people, even with people who had saner points and points of delicate discussion and refined points, even they are trolled. So you can't help it in today's time and age. Trolled by one of the sides. So the anti side and the pro side. So rather than discussing concepts and ideas, which I always say that please agree or disagree or support or not support concepts and ideas which make our nation a stronger nation, rather than just supporting and opposing politics or political parties. If you are so much invested into a political party, you end up, just in an echo chamber, and as I said, in makhanbazi, just meaty meaty baatein karke trying to impress people. I don't think that will lead to a good conclusion in any sector.
Somebody has asked this question. It's a very weird question and also interesting at the same time. They're like, if the government does not tweak the scheme, could actually members of this scheme that go out of 4 years and they could be picked up by disgruntled movements that are actually working against India? So it actually could backfire also. Has anybody thought about that?
See, it's a I wouldn't call it a weird question. It's a very valid question because ultimately, if they are not employed gainfully, we can end up with a militarized society, which is not a good thing. So that's why I say that the society, the institutions, the government, the military, the industry, all of us have to come together to ensure that there is no exploitative move from anywhere for the men and women who serve in this scheme. After 4 years, not even a single person should be left without a job or without a gainful employment. That's what we should aim for because we owe it to them. I mean, they've served for 4 years. I mean, they will be serving for 4 years. We have taken the best uh, out of the youth, and it is our duty to ensure that they're not exploited by any quarter and they get the best. And that can only that can only happen when all of us get together and with tweaks from the government.
Yeah, but to be very honest, I read the question because it was asked by a viewer. But I mean, there are gun violence in America. It barely is done by military trained people. It is just done by random people who have access to guns. So if somebody wants to go to the dark side, I think military training or not, they're going to go to the dark side. Yeah,
Yes, you're
the
right.
one with training will be more efficient at it.
In fact, in the US, there have been incidents involving military veterans, and multiple reasons: military training, PTSD, mental issues, homelessness, all those things combined. And which I said at the beginning of the show, we don't face those problems so much because of what? Because of the social security and also the family security, the societal security.
फैमिली
So,
हम
yes.
फैमिली बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड आपने यूज़ किया है। हमारी
हाँ,
सोसाइटी में कल्चर अभी भी इंटैक्ट है, अनलाइक
yes.
अमेरिका जहाँ पे टूट रहा है।
Yes. तो अगर आप फैमिली भी है, फैमिली बैकअप भी है, उसके पास पेंशन होती है, तो उसको गलत कोई काम करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। उसके पास मेडिकल केयर होती है, उसको कोई मेंटल इश्यू होता है, फिजिकल इश्यू होता है, वो सीधा जाके किसी भी ईसीएचएस के हॉस्पिटल में, पॉलीक्लिनिक में जा सकता है। ही और शी दे आर टेकन केयर ऑफ। सो दोज़ थिंग्स डू मैटर। It's not, people think that these are just flimsy things, and civilians भी तो या members of the private organizations भी तो वो ऐसी इतनी simplistically हम नहीं उस बात को देख सकते।
Fair enough, fair enough. Navdeep, before I wrap today's discussion up, I'll leave you with the last words. What would be your last words be before we wrap today's chat up?
The last word is again the same, that we have to stand behind the women and men in uniform, and the women and men in uniform who are behind the machine are to, deserve more sensitivity and more focus than the machine itself. So rather than focusing only on the machine, we have to we have to take care of the women and men in uniform. They are the soul of our military. We can't let them down.
Fair enough, guys. I've tried my best to have this discussion with as much of an open mind as possible. I was very much on the fence with the Agnipath Agniveer scheme. I reached out to Navdeep is because I'm very fond of him. He's one person who tries to do a deep dive in subjects that he talks about. This is a subject he's very passionate about, and I'm glad he came on the podcast and spoke about this because he's someone who tries to stay away from the drama and just talk about the thing as it is. So, Navdeep, thanks for coming, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine, and we'll be in touch, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for this.
All right, guys, we'll wrap today's discussion up. But before we wrap it up, I would like to remind you guys that in the description of the podcast, you'll see the link to Navdeep's Tripper handle and the books. Also, I would recommend you guys to go and buy his books and follow him on Twitter. Especially check out his work on disability pensions and other things. We also did a podcast on that before. So if you sure, I would highly recommend you go and check that out too. Um, he's a very sincere man and he does a lot of good work. People like Navdeep inspire me to do good things in life. And I'll wrap today's discussion up over here. Please support the Cārvāka podcast, like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below. Maybe, without any abuses. Navdeep is very open to discussion. If you go to Twitter and you ask him a genuine question, I'm telling you, he responds to a lot of people. So maybe you guys should go and do that too. And as far as I'm concerned, you can support the Cārvāka podcast by becoming a member on YouTube or Patreon, or buy the merch or send your donations to UPI. I see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care, bye bye.
Thank you.